Before the first truck rumbled awake on Maple Street, let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever wondered what people are truly like when they think no one important is watching? If stories about hidden kindness, quiet cruelty, and unexpected grace move your heart, tap like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the very end, because this story will change the way you look at ordinary faces you pass every day. The morning air smelled of wet paper and yesterday's rain as the garbage trucks lined up at the curb. A small, hunched woman in a faded green uniform adjusted the frayed strap of her gloves and pulled her caplauer over her eyes. No one would have guessed that beneath the loose jacket and dust-smudged cheeks was Liang Wenhao, a man whose name appeared on glass towers and business magazines. He had once commanded rooms with a glance. Now he waited quietly to be told where to stand. At 70, his back ached more than it used to, but the ache he felt in his chest had nothing to do with age. It was the ache of doubt. His only son had married 3 years earlier, and Wenhao had tried to be generous, distant, respectful. Yet rumors drifted to him like smoke, stories of his daughter-in-law, Xu Lan, being sharp with house staff, dismissive to those she considered beneath her. His son defended her with tired smiles, saying she was stressed, that city life was hard. Wenhao wanted the truth, not the truth polished for a boardroom. The truth that appeared in the quiet hours when no one thought it mattered. So he became Madam Lin, a temporary hire on the sanitation crew assigned to the gated community where his son lived. The uniform swallowed his wealth whole. The name swallowed his identity. He learned to move slowly, to keep his eyes lowered. The men on the crew were polite enough, offering her lighter bags at first, until the supervisor barked that everyone carried their share. Wenhao thanked them anyway. It felt strange, being thanked for the smallest decency he had once taken for granted. The first morning outside his son's villa, the iron gates slid open like a mouth opening to yawn. The houses inside gleamed, all marble steps and trimmed hedges, a world built to forget where trash came from. Xu Lan emerged with a stack of black bags tied neatly with ribbon-like knots. She didn't look at Madam Lin. She placed the bags down, checked her phone, and sighed as if the air itself had inconvenienced her. One bag split as Wenhao lifted it, coffee grounds spilling onto the pavement. He bent to scoop them up with his gloved hands. Xu Lan clicked her tongue. "Be careful," she said, her voice clipped. "This pavement stains." Then she turned and went back inside. The gate slid shut. The words weren't cruel, they were small. But small things, Wenhao knew, could bruise deeply when repeated enough. Day by day, he watched. He saw how the doorman straightened when Xu Lan approached, how the gardener's shoulders tightened. Once, a young courier tripped at the gate, packages tumbling. Xu Lan stepped around him, her heels careful not to touch the scattered boxes. Wenhao helped the boy gather them. The boy whispered thanks, eyes bright with embarrassment. Xu Lan was already gone. Wenhao told himself to be patient. People were complicated. One cold moment did not define a heart. But the pattern settled like dust on his sleeves. One afternoon, rain fell hard and sudden. The crew took shelter under the narrow awning of a convenience store. Wenhao's breath wheezed. The supervisor noticed and told him to sit. Inside the store, Xu Lan stood at the counter, arguing with the clerk about a coupon that had expired the night before. The clerk's hands trembled as she apologized. Wenhao waited by the door, dripping onto the mat. When Xu Lan turned, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. There was nothing in her gaze, no recognition, no curiosity, only the flat impatience of someone who had already moved on. She brushed past him, and the bell chimed. Wenhao felt something settle heavy in his stomach. It was not anger, it was grief. He had hoped to be wrong. That evening, as the crew finished their route, Wenhao found a small wallet wedged beneath a hedge near the villa. Inside was a photo of a woman and a little girl, smiling with missing teeth, and a card from the clinic where the gardener worked part-time. Wenhao brought it to the security desk. The gardener arrived breathless, relief flooding his face when he saw the wallet. He bowed and thanked Madam Lin again and again. Xu Lan passed by, pausing only long enough to say, "You should be more careful with your things." The gardener nodded, shame reddening his cheeks. Wenhao's chest tightened. He wanted to say something then, to remind her that carelessness and misfortune were not sins. But tests were meant to be endured, not interrupted. The storm came 2 nights later. The river swelled, the drains clogged, and water crept into the lower levels of the community. The sanitation crew was called in before dawn. Wenhao waded through ankle-deep water, lifting soaked boxes, clearing leaves from the grates. His hands shook with the cold. At the villa, the gate was open, the lights blazing. Xu Lan stood on the steps, Phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp with panic. The basement is flooding, she said. We have important documents down there. Can you do something? The supervisor shouted instructions. Wenhao moved to help carry boxes up the steps. His foot slipped on the slick stone. He fell hard, pain flashing white through his hip. The box he carried burst open, papers floating free like pale fish. For a moment, the world narrowed to rain and breath and the distant sound of the river. Shu Lan stared. The supervisor swore and ran to Wenhao's side. Call an ambulance, someone said. Wenhao waved them off, struggling to sit. The pain was sharp but bearable. What surprised him was the sound that followed, Shu Lan's breath catching, a small, helpless sound. She knelt, the hem of her coat soaking through, and gathered the floating papers with bare hands. I'm sorry, she said to Wenhao, the words tumbling out awkwardly. I didn't see the water there. Are you hurt? She reached for his arm, unsure, as if afraid to touch and afraid not to. The ambulance arrived anyway. As they lifted him, Wenhao saw fear in her eyes. Real fear, not for the documents, for the person who had fallen. In the hospital's harsh light, Wenhao lay with a thin blanket over his legs. The doctor said it was a deep bruise, no fracture. Shu Lan stood by the bed, wringing her hands. I'll pay for everything, she said. I should have helped more before. I didn't think. Wenhao studied her face. The polished edges were still there, but something had cracked, letting in a draft of humility. He wondered how many people needed to fall before she learned to look down. When he was discharged, Shu Lan insisted on driving him back. The car was quiet. At a red light, she spoke. My mother used to collect bottles, she said suddenly. After my father died, I hated when my classmates saw her. I pretended not to know her. She worked herself sick. I told myself that when I grew up, I would never be small like that again. Her eyes shone, fixed on the light. Somewhere along the way, I decided being strong meant being untouchable. Wenhao felt the truth of her confession settle between them like a fragile bridge. At the gate, Wenhao thanked her and stepped out. She hesitated. Please, come by the house tomorrow. I'll make tea. Wenhao nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting under the cap she still believed hid only a tired old woman. The next day, Wenhao arrived not in uniform but in the quiet authority of himself. The driver opened the door. The cap was gone, the jacket replaced by a simple suit. Shu Lan's teacup stilled halfway to her lips. Her face drained of color, then flooded with it. Father, she whispered, the word strange in her mouth. Wenhao bowed his head slightly. I came to see who you were when you thought I wasn't watching, he said gently. I found someone capable of care, and someone afraid of becoming small. Both can be true. Tears slid down Shu Lan's cheeks. She knelt, not in performance, but in relief at being seen fully, faults and all. Wenhao lifted her up. Stand, he said. It's easier to grow when you're not on your knees. In the weeks that followed, Shu Lan changed in ways that did not announce themselves. She learned the names of the doorman's children. She brought tea to the gardeners when the sun burned high. When the courier came, she took the boxes from his arms. Not as charity, but as recognition. Wenhao returned to his quiet life, the test complete, the answer complicated but hopeful. He knew change was not a single storm but a season of small choices. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that the truest measure of who we are shows up in the moments we think don't count, hit like, subscribe, and carry this lesson into the next ordinary kindness you're tempted to overlook. Because the world doesn't change in boardrooms or headlines. It changes when someone who once walked past decides to stop, bend down, and see another human being right where they stand.